Okay, so our topic tonight is why rehab. And the team and I have been discussing at length what is it that the families still need? What is it that they need to learn? And why? Why do we need rehab? So I've asked my colleagues to jump in anytime. And we're going to share some of our own experiences. We're going to share the reality of working with addiction and living with addiction, because majority of the team of changers have addiction in their family in one way or another. They're either in recovery themselves from active addiction, or they're in recovery from codependency and have family members who are addicted. So why rehab? Like, why do you send your children to treatment when you lived with them for a very long time? You've given birth to them, you've adopted them, you've raised them. So I can't see any of my colleagues. Please bear with me.
I'm here, Cheryl.
Okay, perfect. So why do people send their loved ones to rehab? What's the benefit? What do we do differently?
And I think it's an interesting question, Cheryl, because, what is rehabilitation? What are we trying to achieve by getting them into rehab?
Cheryl, you know that my answer is we say no. That's what rehab is.
Yeah. I'm glad you raised that here, because I very often have to say to families and parents, that's what you are commissioning us to do. We say no for you. By the time a loved one lands up in treatment, I think the family's so broken and we are so confused and we hurt and paranoid and hysterical. And they know we love them. They probably still love us as well. But the insanity and the chaos that ruled the entire dynamic of the family and the extended family and even colleagues. And, it was said a couple of years ago, and I don't know the current figures, but when I was working in treatment in the late 80s, it was said that each addict affects 16 people around them.
Yeah.
And it might be the same and it might be more. But if you think about all of us together, there's, 30 of us or so on this platform tonight. If our loved ones affected 16 people and, 16, there's 36 of us on this platform. So if each one of us had 16 people affected around, that's it's quite a big chunk of the community. And how do we get affected? I think very often, and I've heard it a couple of times this week, people have said, I feel like I'm going mad. I don't know who to trust. I don't know if they sound feasible. They sound...
I know. I've had
they sound rational. They look rational. And sometimes I often say to you guys, if only they had a big red bubble that popped up on their heads when they were about to relapse, or if they were in active addiction, so we would know we were dealing with that using addict. And the using addict, I think, is so different from recovering addicts. And that the chaos, insanity of active addiction is very often why you'll do anything to get your loved one into treatment. What is rehab? What is the role that rehab serves? I think it starts off with detox, because nowadays, majority of the drugs require a detox process. When I first started in the 80s and 90s, the only drugs that required detox was alcohol, benzodiazepines, and heroin.
Yeah.
But now, majority of our loved ones are coming in addicted to marijuana, and they're off the wall. They are sick, they're psychotic, they're delusional, they're impossible. So most drugs today and alcohol requires a detox process. That being said, it doesn't mean that they come and they lie in bed for 3 days and we feed them breakfast in bed. As soon as they are able, we want them to attend group therapy and participate in the process. So sometimes I think the families will get the calls of saying, do you know, you're paying so much money and they're making me sweep the passage. Yes, we do. We give them therapeutic duties, which we call TDs. And those therapeutic duties is the first step in the rehabilitation process, because those therapeutic duties are teaching them responsibility, how to clean up after themselves. I think most of our families, mine included, we would baby them, we would pamper them, we would do anything not to have them upset. We would do anything to keep the peace and the status quo. So we would make their beds, we would cook dinner, we pander to them, we run around for them, and that's not what they need. We often get, our clients say to us on a daily basis, this is supposed to be a 4-star facility. Well, I don't know if they went to a 4-star drug dealer or a 5-star drug dealer. There's no stars in treatment. The best thing we can say to them is no, get up, show up, dress up, and start dealing. They also start off by getting what we call daily objectives. We call them JFTs. So what a JFT is, it's a saying that they have to say every time they check into group. So it's, hi, my name's Cheryl, I'm an addict, and just for today, I have to dress up.
Get up, dress up, and show up.
Get up, dress up, and show up. That's their first JFT. When they come in for the week, that's what they need to do. Why do we do that? Because most addicts would take the easy way out. They would want to sleep all week. They want to be knocked out. They don't want to think, they don't want to feel, and they most certainly don't want to face the consequences of their addiction. So whilst we're very kind and gentle and loving, we're very firm. And that firmness is, we love you enough to challenge you, and we will make sure that we do everything in our power to help you get better. So we give them responsibilities. Our patients at Changes don't cook their own food. Some rehabs they do, but they need to serve it. They need to go and collect it. They need to let the chef know if there's other dietary requirements, if somebody's a vegan, if somebody's allergic. They need to take responsibility at that level. They need to wash their own dishes. And you might say to me, but hang on, we're paying a lot of money, medical aid is paying, at the psychiatric clinics, they don't need to wash their own dishes. We find that, again, the more responsibility they take, the quicker the chance they have of getting and finding recovery. They do start with their therapist immediately. We start with a biopsychosocial, which is a history taking. We know that they're not going to be very honest, so we ask the family to provide us with collateral. Sometimes the family is able to give us very accurate, in-depth collateral, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes the family's terrified. They don't want us to disclose. So I'll give you this information, but you can't tell them that you have it. Makes our lives very difficult. We need leverage to say to them, believe it or not, they're sitting group and they'll say, hi, Cheryl, I'm an addict, but they don't believe that they are an addict. And that comes in different layers. So to dismantle those layers, we ask for the collateral from the family. So if we've asked you, please provide us in-depth, detailed collateral.
And that's so important, Cheryl, because often they come in with such a delusion that the only people they've affected with their addiction is themselves. This is why that collateral is, because we can start to show them how the damage they've caused in the people around them as well.
We had a patient recently who told the nursing sister, and generally they open up to the nursing sister. Upon admission, told the nursing sister, I don't know why I'm here. I don't take drugs. My drink was spiked. And I think, well, we said it lit up like a Christmas tree because I think there was only one drug that wasn't present on that panel. So that's the depth of the denial and the delusion. So the urine test also provides us with collateral. The breathalyzer provides us with collateral because, you know, if you're breathing on a breathalyzer and it's positive, it means you've consumed alcohol. Breathalyzer doesn't need to lie. Drug tests don't need to lie. Once they've had their detox and they've been acquainted, so they have a group, a welcome group with their peers, and they get assigned a buddy. This buddy isn't there to keep them sober. The buddy is there to help them be accountable. So the buddy introduces them, it helps them take responsibility, shows them the facility, explains the rules, the house rules, the expectations, and they do take care of each other. So if somebody realizes somebody's very ill or they're not doing well, they will let the team know. So they get a buddy. When they go into group, a lot of our patients do not want to go into group. They try everything to get out of group. And group is one of the fundamentally most powerful tools treatment centers around the world have on dismantling denial. Because it helps them with the guilt and shame, but it helps them, it equalizes them because, hey, if this lady who works for a bank stole, well, it's okay for me to share the fact that I stole and that, you know, my life is unmanageable. That's our focus, is trying to get them to see they're powerless over their addiction and that their lives had become unmanageable. So it's step one of Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous. Group therapy it's a safe place. We will never share with the families what happens in group, but we challenge them, we push them, we give them direction. So sometimes we actually, in their JFTs, we tell them group won't start until you share your consequences. And the group will sit in silence until that person who has to open group and share their consequences talks and shares their consequences. If the team or the group aren't happy with it, they'll push them. So you will get complaints from us. Oh, you know, they push us too hard. You know, nothing's ever good enough for her. She's always challenging me. Yeah, that's exactly what we do. That's part of what treatment is. It's always done in a loving way. We don't raise our voices. We don't scream at them. We don't swear at them. We may swear for effect, but we will never swear at a patient. Excuse me. They then have an opportunity to process with the therapist, with the psychologists, the social worker, or the addictions counselor, all the information that's come out of group, and we process our witness of their behavior. So if we realize, okay, they're not making their beds, they're not shaving, they're not eating food, they're not taking their medication, it gets raised in groups and in individual sessions. We also immediately start introducing them to the 12 steps. They need to do, it's called 60 stories, but because we only have them for 3 weeks, we make them do 36 stories. And they need to write in-depth details about the consequences of their actions. We ask that they don't share it with their families yet. It's too much, it's too deep, it's too personal, it's too raw. So when they are in treatment and they're phoning you, please don't ask them what they're doing in rehab. Listen a little bit, don't try and be their counselor. Be aware that most of the time they are going to manipulate you. If we don't hear twice or 3 times a week, the food is terrible. They don't feed us. The team don't like us. They're only here for the money. They don't care. That's what the addict will tell the family, because they want you to lose faith in the team and they want you to take them out of treatment. And no problem, can go find another rehab. They may do things similar, they may do things differently, but the fundamentals are the same. We're here to dismantle denial around addiction. we provide family support groups. We do family conjoints, because the families are the ones that are going to bear the consequences of their non-recovery and using if they come home and they start using. And the family have been deeply affected by their addiction, and the whole family's in a mess. Clive, is there anything that you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I think that when we look at that, it's like they want to straight away say, I'm better. I've got this, They'll be one day in group and believe that they have every answer for their now so-called recovery. And we haven't even scratched the surface, This is where we often try to get them to slow down. This is not a race, it's a journey. There's so much to discover. Take it easy, There's a lot that we want to give them, and it takes time. Each and every patient that comes in is at a different level, and this is what's so good about the groups, is that the groups actually become like the community that can call each other. They also start to see, hang on, I can relate to somebody else. I have the same problem, or I didn't even want to say that, but that's what I was thinking. I think that is where groups are so beneficial, in that they can start to see that I'm not alone. My thinking is not the right thinking for a normal person. An addict can understand me in a lot of ways, So I think that's where it is. I think also, we've had somebody turn around in a therapeutic duty and says, I don't mop the floor in my mother's house, and we turn around and say, this isn't your mother's house. This is where we want to teach you to do that. And when we're doing it in a therapeutic duty, to be proud of what you do, so that when you finish it, you can say, wow, I did that. It's giving them that little bit of self-worth as they start to recover.
And it goes one step further. I think once somebody walks on their clean floors and messes it, they get upset. Then they start realizing, but this is what my mother or my wife, my girlfriend or my father keeps talking about, that I don't care about them and what they do. So it gives them a little bit of a conscience. Hopefully it gives them accountability, but it starts a healthier pride. Because when they come in with junkie pride. And when they start doing chores and responsibilities, they can start having some self-pride that I did this, and I don't want anybody else to trash it. I want to go to the other question that I've put on the slideshow on this page. Why can't they just stop, and why could we who love them not help them? Because don't you think that's something we as families feel all the time? Like, why? What have I done wrong? Why can't I help them? We love them enough. We should be able to offer them a better life. We've heard that, people who have connections don't use that many drugs. Why? Why can't loved ones and families help them get better? Do you have any comments around that?
I think that it's such a good question, Cheryl, because often rehab is the last resort. They have done that. They have listened to the empty promises of the addict. The addict has promised them that I won't use, that I won't see those people, that I will do certain things. But that's where they get to a stage where the family just they're sick and tired of being sick and tired. They have tried to help them. And sometimes we are the ones that can actually help them because we can get them to see their problem. Where the family can often enable. I will monitor the drugs for you. I will keep the drugs for you. I will take you to the dealer. That's how much an addict can get a family involved into such codependency, where we want to help them to say, no, that's not the way. This is where you sometimes have to be cruel to be kind. Sending them into rehab is the biggest gift you can give them, and yourself as the family.
Yeah.
And maybe
I had just add. Sorry,
just
Tia,
to
hi.
Hi. I want to say
Right.
that Melanie Klein always said, if you bring somebody up in a perfect environment, you will have a perfectly awful person. And that's often what we do with our loved ones, is we want to clean the floor for them, bring them up, give them everything they need, etc. But then they don't get resilience. And if they don't get resilience, they go to drugs. So
Yeah.
do not be the perfect parent. Tell them the truth that's going on. Love them, but don't do everything for them.
Now, listen, a little bit's been said about the TDs tonight. The TDs are really about just beginning to take some personal responsibility for the space around you. And in terms of you guys being there as the perfect recovery support and to help them, Professor George Valent at the Harvard Department of Psychiatry did years and years of research, and there are 4 common denominators that are present in 50% of stable long-term recovery, so 15, 20 years and more. And the first is a reinforcing behavior, inspirational group membership, compulsory supervision, and bonds with people they haven't hurt in the past. And all 4 of those are present in the 12-step recovery system. I just want to touch on the bonds with people they've not hurt in the past, because Cheryl and Clive were saying that you guys can't be there for them in that way. And it's important to understand that they have to find support from other recovering people who are a little bit further along the journey that can help them with their specific addiction needs. You're not best placed to guide them in their recovery. They have to spread out, develop further roots and foundations, and find a life in recovery that's separate from you guys. So bonds with other people they haven't hurt in the past, so important. So that begins in treatment with your counselor, with your therapist, with your peers, and also with the people in the greater recovery community, because we have 12-step support groups there. So that's very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe
And
just
I think
to
what's important there, Gareth, what you were just saying is, we want a wife to be a wife. We want a husband to be a husband. We want a mother to be a mother, and a father to be a father, and a child to be a child. Not there to be their therapist, their monitor, see what they're doing things. That is where that greater thing of a sponsor and external factors help them, and that the family can actually start running as a normal family. It's so cool.
And maybe as a surprise to most of the family and loved ones, it's important to note, as a person that is in recovery, the second question, Cheryl, that you asked, why can't they stop? Every addict in active addiction, especially when things have gotten a bit tough and hard, asks that question themselves. They are also as baffled as the loved ones. But you see, addiction is quite a shame-based problem, is that if you see how much or what I have to do to get my drugs, if you see the things I have to do to get drugs, and if you see the pain I'm in, maybe you might ask me to stop. And honestly, I want to stop, but I don't know how to stop. So, and I think when they come to us, we try to clarify, you can't stop because of the biology, because of all these biopsychosocial reasons. That's one way you can stop, but you're also not alone. See, there's all these people that have asked the same question. And I think that a group of people having the same problem and being given the same solution kind of allows them to start, understanding that, okay, I'm not just a bad human being. I have this problem. And if I accept that I have this problem, actually that's where the solution lies. And I just wanted to ask people, because I've also a million times I used to wonder, but why can't I stop? I had the evidence, when you were talking about collateral. I woke up every day and I would look at my collateral, look at the damage that I did, and I would say, today is the last day I'm gonna use. And I meant it with every blood in my vein, but I couldn't. And I could not understand, why can I not stop? And I think one of the reasons, one of the most amazing gifts that the rehab give us as people in recovery is understanding the actual problem, understanding the problem and understanding the solution.
And what you're saying, Brian, is so important, because when they come in, they believe if they could stop, they could beat this. It's like, for them, if they can't stop, they're a failure. And we're trying to show them that in the disease, you're not a failure. You can't stop on your own. This is something where you have the obsession, the obsession and compulsion. And this is where we help you to understand and get to the realization of what the disease of addiction is all about.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, the next slide. We posted this on Facebook recently. And if you're not on our Facebook, please feel free to join, click like after this group. So why is addiction understood to be a family disease? We call it the 3 C's. The major component for family members who live with another person's addiction is that you didn't cause it, you cannot control it, and you unfortunately cannot cure them if they're using. Having some kind of a relationship with an addict often involves trying to care, control, and or manage their addiction. The stress and exhaustion of caring for or about somebody with a chronic disease of addiction can lead to frustration, anxiety, depression, unsafe living conditions, and distraction. We learn how to detach so we can start to relinquish our obsession with an addict and their chaos. We need to let go of trying to fix, control, manipulate, or influence them. And this can allow us to live happier, more manageable lives. And the caption that we've put up is, I heard a parent say, drugs ruined my life, and I wasn't even the one doing them. And that hit my heart. Until we can come to terms with the fact that addiction is a family disease. So we sometimes say, the addict uses and the family gets sick. We sometimes say, you didn't cause it, you can't control it, you can't cure it. And a lot of parents can't hear that. They can't absorb what that actually means. And I think in reality, what it means is you've tried everything before you come into treatment. You've tried everything. You've begged, you've borrowed, you've stolen, you've manipulated, you've lied for them, you've covered up for them, you've bought them drugs, you've thrown the drugs away, you have bartered, you've offered, and nothing has worked. And why it hasn't worked is they've got the disease, and lo and behold, so do we as the family members. So I have... Yes.
What happened was we've got one comment on the thing from Teresa saying, the cruel irony is being the smarter they are, the harder it is for them to accept their powerlessness. I think that it's not only the irony, I think that a lot of addicts are very, very intelligent. That, the ways, the means that they go about manipulating and the stories and the Oscar performances, they're very clever. This is where an addict knows how and who to manipulate, and that can destroy. This destroys all the time because the family just want to believe they're going to get better.
Yeah. And why do they manipulate? I think that's a question that none of us really get to. I think first and foremost, we've got to accept family members. It's our responsibility to accept this once we know it and we've heard it. They manipulate us because they want to use in peace. Nothing more and nothing less. Part of that manipulation is they want to avoid the consequences of the addiction. They want us to be there to fund them, and they want us to be there to cushion them when they fall. And that's part of the manipulation. And unfortunately, we as family members get hooked up in it because we love them. And it goes back to the question about why rehab. We do love them in a human kind of therapeutic love. And that love is, I can't let you hurt yourself, but I also love you enough to say, I'm not buying your bullshit. And families will say, I don't buy your bullshit, but yes, but, or okay, I'm going to do it one last time. We're going to try it this way. We're going to give you the benefit of the doubt. You didn't mean to do this to me. So part of understanding that manipulation is, it's not our battle. It should not be our battle. I've given us some myths that I got off the fortbehavioral.com blog. And it encapsulates it quite nicely. We think addiction is a choice. Addiction starts as a voluntary decision when somebody occasionally drinks or uses drugs. However, it begins to change over time as the continued substance use changes the brain and results in a uncontrollable and compulsive use. Furthermore, half of the risk of developing an addiction is related to genetics, while the other half is related to family, home life, social influence, and environmental factors. There are also differences in the brain structure and function for each individual, and brain imaging studies have found that these differences highlight the cause and effects of addiction. These studies explain why some people develop addictions while others do not. Therefore, addiction is not a choice. It's a chronic brain disease.
Yeah. And it is, Cheryl, you often will get, how we look at it is people will start off just with experimentation, and from experimentation, they go to maybe that social. But with an addict, it then crosses to the abuse because they have that heightened effect of the drug. And that's where the disease and the brain disease comes into effect.
Yeah. And I think if a loved one believes that they caused the addiction, I think usually what it emphasizes, usually when the loved one tells me, oh, I feel so responsible, for me, it emphasizes the need for such spaces, the platforms where people can differentiate or understand what it actually means to have an addiction. Because if I think I caused it, then I am blaming myself. I am saying I, in some way or another, caused the biology to happen to my child. Therefore, I should fix it. If I caused it, therefore I should fix it.
The thing is, we have to realize biological illnesses there's a lot of psychiatric illnesses that is treated not with medication, but with very specific therapies. One of it is the OCD. We know that our medication is relatively not that great for it. And so we try medication, but people have to go for therapy as well. Now, just because I don't have a tablet to fix addiction doesn't mean it's not a disease. It is a disease. You can treat the addiction disease with slowly changing the way people see things and making new pathways on how to cope. So yes, a big part of people, of my patients, probably 60%, have a dual diagnosis, so they have something else with it. Because we use a lot of dual diagnosis, and people know that in changes, medication won't be stopped. We get more dual diagnosis and changes than in other rehabs. But even if I don't find any illness that I can treat with a tablet, does not mean it's not a neurological illness.
Thank you, Dr.
Yeah. And I think Dr. Such a thing that you're saying, which is so important, is, a person can present with diabetes or borderline diabetes, and that can be treated, with a diet initially. But if they ignore it, they're going to go into a full-blown diabetes.
I think there's two.
So yes, Cheryl.
Sorry, Brian. I think there's two schools of thought. I think some of us think that the disease concept is a cop-out because our children, sometimes loved ones, say, I'm sick, I can't do that, it's going to make me relapse, or I'm sick, my counselor said X, Y, Z. The understanding of the disease doesn't mean it's a cop-out and a permission to go and use at whim. It's an understanding of why my body and brain is working the way that it is, and there are methods of treating this. And one of the most solid treatments we have in this country, like Dr. Tia said, Changes is one of the few rehabs that offers dual diagnosis treatment with medication and psychiatry. But the other cool, really amazing is a 12-step program. It is such a broad-based philosophy. It's about taking responsibility. It's about learning humility and respect. It's about listening. It's about surrendering. It's about challenging your ego. It's about finding camaraderie from other people who understand. It's not just, they don't go to NA meetings and some guru sits up there and says, don't do drugs. The guru sits up there and says, well, I did all the drugs that I needed to do for me, and I can help you should you choose to not use. So the combination of that biopsychosocial is important, but the family has a huge role to play. It's no good. I remember in the late 80s, I just was branching out in this field, and I worked at a facility in Auckland Park. And I opened the door 10 o'clock one night, and there was this young 17, 18-year-old, and he had a tiny little suitcase. And he just literally took this child by the scruff of his neck, threw him in the door, and he said, here, fix him. And he drove away. He got in his car and he drove away. And we couldn't find his name. We couldn't find his number. It took us about 3 days to track the father down. It was before cell phones and social media. When we got hold of him, we said to him, you can't just drop your kid off because you've had enough. We need collateral. We need payment. We need, how are we going to look after this child? And the father said, no, you must just fix him. You trained, you know how to do it, just fix him. And unfortunately, we can't sell, we fix addicts or we fix addiction. We treat it so that they learn the tools that they can go out and practice them. And one of the most fundamental tools is the family needs to get better. If the family doesn't work on their recovery, we don't see much recovery. Where we see recovery is that regular attendance to one's own recovery. I'm going to go to the next myth because I think it's going to start talking about more about addiction and families. Addiction is a character flaw that only affects bad people. I think most of our patients do come in and they say, I'm bad. Since addiction is a disease born from the brain, it affects behavior, memory, and motor skills. The drugs or alcohol that are abused become the main aspect of the addict's existence, which occurs because the substances change the brain structure and function in critical ways. They may lie. No, they do lie. They cheat, they steal to maintain the habit. And due to chemical changes in their brain and subsequently altered behaviors, addiction doesn't discriminate. Therefore, it permeates our entire society. Men and women, young and old, from all walks of life, are at risk of becoming addicted to drugs and alcohol. Even good people do bad things. So the myth that addiction only affects bad people is exactly that. It's a false belief. The addict uses and the family gets sick.
Yeah, I've had a joke in the rooms where they say even if you gave, let's say, the pup some too much whiskey, his behavior would change. If you gave a sheikh who's, the mufti of Muslims, his behavior would change. You put any human, saint or not, if you put some substances into their system, their behaviors will change. Does that make them bad people? No, it's just the result of substances. My cognition goes to zero and I will do crazy things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that we even try to emphasize, when I'm bad, we turn around and say to them and try and help them is that we did bad things in our addiction. Doesn't mean we're a bad person, And I think that's the important thing over there as well, because that takes that self-worth and that self-esteem so low, you want to build it into that, we don't condone what you did, but you did this because you needed to survive in your disease.
And I've also often heard that people say, I just want to be good. And I was so bad, I want to be good. No. Or I want to be better than I was. And we often have to say to them, you know what, you're an ill person trying to get well. And you don't have to become something extraordinary. Staying off drugs and alcohol is extraordinary on its own. Very few people can do it. Even social drinkers would struggle going to a wedding and not drinking. Women who are pregnant, who choose to abstain during their pregnancy, they may not be addicts, but they find it difficult to abstain from that mood and mind-altering substance. When we first started reading out the preamble about alcohol. If you've had alcohol or drugs, please don't speak. Quite a few people got offended with it. And they said, but I'm not the addict. And we said, well, firstly, you don't realize how you sound when you have had alcohol. And whether you're addicted or not, it's a form of respect for the person in recovery that they don't hear or smell or see your behavior that's altered with chemicals.
Yeah.
And most people, if they can't abstain, have to look at what's going on for them in their relationship with alcohol or drugs, that they can't say no.
Yeah.
So myth number 3, those suffering from addiction must want treatment for it to be successful. No, it's not the case. Practically nobody wants treatment for their addiction. Nobody comes into rehab happy. They come in grumpy, angry, belligerent, suicidal, threatening, challenging. They're a mess. It's one of the reasons why we don't let them phone you for 7 days, because they're not ready. They're not equipped. They want to manipulate you to get them out. So most people seeking treatment and entering treatment throughout the world are led to do so because the persistence of family members or due to a court order. Sometimes jobs and other factors, but basically they are persuaded with tough interventions to get them into treatment. However, many studies show that those who enter treatment while facing high pressure to do so can do better in treatment than their counterparts. So wanting treatment does not equate to a successful outcome and recovery. It's simply a myth, and studies have proven it to be false.
And I think that what's so important there is they often come in and they don't want to be there, and they believe that they're there for their wife or their husband or their mother and father. But as soon as they start to realize that if they can actually do this for themselves, that's when the turnaround happens.
And the magic, I always say it's a magic. Once the client starts to be open-minded, for example, and I think Cheryl, you mentioned it, they come in fighting, and then you say, okay, I want you to start, before you check in, say this just for today. For example, I'll trust, risk, and share. And they try that, and then they are open-minded to doing their TD. Then they're open-minded to opening up in group. The more a client does, you see that shift start to happen. A client who came in fighting is now all of a sudden doing all these things voluntarily. They do so well, they even become headers. They become the ones that help others to participate and engage and stuff like that. So I think once they come in and they start shifting through these things that they initially don't want to participate in, you start to get the results. And that's recovery. You don't have to understand how it's going to work. You just have to do it. Once you do it, in hindsight, you look at, oh, this thing actually works. You're celebrating a year or 2 years or whatever it is. And that's indescribably beautiful, because you see the magic right there in your face.
Yeah. Thank you. I think we're going to stop here tonight and open it to the floor. And there are 2 questions, but I'd like family members to, just for a moment, like half a minute each if necessary, just share, ask a question, something that might have triggered that we said. We'd like this to be as interactive as possible. We are going to switch the recording off, so feel free to be as open as possible.